Sri Ramanuja. God, the all-powerful Father of all, out of infinite compassion for his children, comes into the world assuming the forms of holy men to dissociate religion and help men go forward in the path which leads to good here and hereafter. The lives of the Great One are always consecrated to the good of many. They descend on earth for no selfish ends of their own. They are ever preoccupied with the thought how to remove the afflictions of the lowly, the indigent, and the helpless. By knowing and following the path discovered by these great ones, by their deep and constant meditation on the good of all living beings, one can live one's life on earth in supreme happiness and heavenly bliss. Supremely glorious and large-hearted Sri Ramanuja is among the foremost of such Mahatmas. Before going into the life history of Sri Ramanuja, let us have a brief introduction of Vishishtadvaita philosophy of Ramanuja. The Vishishtadvaita philosophy is also known as qualified non-dualism. It emphasizes the unity of Brahman with its attributes, where the world and souls are considered its body inseparable from it. Bhakti is central to Vishishtadvaita philosophy, with the ultimate goal of attaining liberation through unwavering devotion to the Lord. In this philosophy, Sharanagati, that is, total surrender to the Lord, is considered the primary path to liberation. The life history of Sri Ramanuja. At about 939 AD, Sri Yamunacharya, also called Alavandar, was a leader of the entire Vaishnava community. His uncommon renunciation, dispassion, erudition, humility and steadfastness towards his chosen ideal were admired by the Vaishnavas. He has dedicated himself to the lotus feet of the God with tremendous devotion and love. Periya Thirumalai Nambi, also called Sri Sailapurna, was one of his chief disciples. He had two sisters named Kantimati and Mahadevi. Kantimati was married to a pious Brahmana named Asuri Keshavacharya of Sri Perambatur, 30 miles southwest of Madras, and younger Mahadevi was wedded to Kamalanayana of village Aharam. After their marriage, Kantimati and Keshavacharya was living happily for many years at Sri Perambatur. But since they had no child, they went to Tiruvallikeni in Madras and performed sacrifices to Sri Parthasarathi Perumal to beget a child. After the performance of the yajna was over, Keshavacharya had a vision of the Lord in his dream. The Lord said, "O Keshavacharya, I am pleased with your good conduct and steadfast devotion. I myself shall be born as your son." Instigated by evil motives and unable to know the purport of teachings of great ones, men are considering themselves to be Godhead, and out of pride they are becoming wicked, willful and perverse. So I have to incarnate myself as an Acharya. Your desire will be fulfilled. About a year later, fortunate Kantimati gave birth to a son endowed with all auspicious marks, who came to be known as Sri Ramanuja. He was born in 939 AD on Thursday, the 12th Chaitra, in the 5th day of the bright fortnight, when the sun was in the zodiac of Cancer. Being so born, he appeared before all like the newly arisen sun, dispelling the darkness of ignorance. About the same time, Mahadevi too became the mother of a son. He was named Govinda. Sri Sailapurna was too glad to see the two little infants endowed with all the auspicious signs. The birth and the zodiac of these infants were the same as those of the sons of Sumitra, that is Lakshmana and Shatrughna. Accordingly, he named him Ramanuja, that is Rama Anuja, the brother of Rama, that is Lakshmana. From his very childhood, Ramanuja gave proof of prodigious powers of his intellect. By hearing a lesson only once from the mouth of his teacher, he could grasp its meaning, however stiff it might be. Young Ramanuja missed no opportunity of associating with holy men. At that time, a great devotee by name Sri Kanchipurna lived in the city of Kanchi. He used to go every day from Kanchi to Poonamalle to worship the deity there. Sri Perumbudur is midway between these two places. So he would every day pass by Ramanuja's house. One evening, Ramanuja accidentally met this holy man, and seeing the divine luster of his face, quite naturally felt drawn to him. On the other hand, Kanchipurana could not consider Ramanuja to be a mere human being. After long spiritual conversations, both of them were bound together by love for each other. Sri Ramanuja stepped into his 16th year. He was soon wedded to a beautiful girl named Rakshagambal, to a great delight of his parents. Struck down by a severe illness, Keshavacharya reached to the end of his life on earth. At the loss of his father, Ramanuja was also plunged in grief for a while, but by the strength of his wisdom, he regained calmness and began to console his mother. As both his mother and he himself missed peace, they decided to shift their residence to Kanchipuram. Even his mother's sister Mahadevi and her son Govinda came along with them. At that time, in the holy city of Kanchi, there lived a renowned professor, Yadava Prakasha, holding the doctrine of non-dualism. Driven by intense yearning for knowledge, Ramanuja too became his disciple. His brother Govinda also followed him. In a very short time, Ramanuja became his chief disciple. But this affection did not last long. Yadava Prakasha was a rigid Advaitin of the type that would not acknowledge God with form. But Sri Ramanuja was a personification of attitude of service and devotion to God. So the doctrines of Yadava could not be pleasing to him. One day, when the other disciples had gone home for their midday meal, after finishing their morning lessons, Yadava Prakasha asked his dearest disciple Ramanuja to massage his body with oil. While studying the Chandogya Upanishad, he had failed to grasp properly the meaning of Kapyasam, which occurs in the earlier portion of the 7th mantra. Yadava Prakasha explained the passage as follows. The two eyes of the golden Purusha are like two lotuses which are red like the nates of a monkey. On hearing this interpretation with the low simile, Ramanuja's soft heart melted, and as he was massaging, tears rolled down from the corner of his eyes like flames of fire and fell on the thigh of Yadava. Yadava understood that something troubled his dear disciple Ramanuja. When he asked in surprise as to what might be the cause of his affliction, Ramanuja replied, "Revered sir, I have been sorely grieved to hear such an unbecoming explanation from a noble soul like you. How sinful it is to compare with the posterior of a monkey the eyes of the Supreme Godhead, who is endowed with all gracious qualities, who is the repository of all the beauty of the universe. From the mouth of the wise person like you, I never expected this." Ramanuja explained that the word Kapyasam comes to mean blossom by the sun. So that part of the mantra will mean the eyes of that Purusha within the golden solar orb are as lovely as the lotuses bloomed by the rays of the sun. Hearing this exposition, Yadava said, "It is not the direct meaning, but only a derived one." Since this incident, Yadava Prakasha took Ramanuja to be a staunch devotee of dualism, and hence his affection for him waned a little. Another day, when expounding the mantra Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, which occurs in the Taittiriyopanishad, Yadava Prakasha said that Brahman is truth, intelligence and infinitude. Ramanuja objected to that and explained the verse as follows. Brahman is endowed with the quality of truth, is not endowed with untruth. Intelligence is his attribute, not nescience. He is infinite, that is, it is not finite. He is endowed with the qualities of truth, intelligence and infinitude. It is by no means reasonable to hold that all these qualities are he himself. These are his, but not he. As the body is mine, I am not the body. On hearing this exposition, Yadava Prakasha flared up in extreme wrath. So one day, Yadava called his other disciples in secret and came out with a plan to get rid of Ramanuja by killing him. Accordingly, at an auspicious moment, the band of disciples, along with Ramanuja and Govinda, headed by Yadava, started on a pilgrimage. After a few days of steady travel, they reached Godaranya at the foot of Vindhya ranges. It was totally an unfrequent place. Thinking that place to be more convenient, he asked his disciples to get ready to kill Ramanuja. But somehow, Govinda came to know of this and informed about the evil plan of his guru to Ramanuja. After hearing the heart-rendering news from Govinda, Ramanuja at first did not know what to do. Then all of a sudden, a great strength overcame him, and someone spoke from inside. Why be afraid? Lord Narayana is there. Ramanuja left the path and entered the deep forest. Without looking back, he went on walking at top speed for about 1 hour. Unable to proceed further, owing to hunger, thirst, and exhaustion, he slept under a tree. When he woke up, he saw a fowler couple approaching him. They inquired about his whereabouts. To that, Ramanuja replied that he was from a far off distance called Kanchipuram from south. The fowler couple replied that they had set out for pilgrimage to Rameshwaram via Kanchipuram, so they shall accompany with him in his journey. Though Ramanuja was at first little unnerved at the appearance of this dark, tall, red-eyed fowler, yet his sweet, affectionate face and candid speech of his wife gradually dispelled his suspicions from his mind, and he agreed to follow. Early next morning, Ramanuja got up and followed the couple. Shortly, they came near a well. Ramanuja got down the steps, washed his face and hands, quenched his thirst. Then he brought up a handful of water for the wife of the fowler to drink. But when he found that even after doing so thrice, she was not satisfied, he went down the well for the 4th time. But when he came up, the couple had already disappeared. On seeing the tower of the temple nearby, he thought that it might be some city. He enquired a passerby. Looking at his face with wonderment, the passerby said with a tone of surprise, "Can't you recognize the reputed city of Kanchi? Aren't you the disciple of Mahatma Yadava Prakasha? I have seen you many a time in this Kanchipuram itself." Ramanuja, like one awakened from sleep and unable to make out anything, looked awestruck. The next moment he remembered the fowler couple and understood clearly the limitless grace of Lakshmi Narayana, who alone was the cause of the deliverance. Ramanuja then proceeded towards Kanchi. Kantimati was weeping at home. She could not at first believe her eyes when all of a sudden she found her son standing before her. When Ramanuja had narrated all from beginning to end, she was shocked to hear the evil designs of Yadava Prakasha. Yet she was beside herself with joy, remembering the grace of the Lord and seeing the face of her son. Sri Ramanuja continued his studies at home. After 3 months, Yadava Prakasha returned to Kanchipuram along with his disciples except for Govinda. On enquiry about her son, Mahadevi came to know that after the disappearance of Ramanuja in the forest, the pilgrims continued their journey to Varanasi and reaching there had the darshan of Vishwanath and bath in the holy Ganga. One day, on going for bath in the Ganga, Govinda got from under the water a beautiful symbol of Banalinga. From then on, Govinda engaged himself in the service of Shiva from the very day. Gradually, his devotion grew so firm that coming near Kalahasti, he purchased a plot of land there, installed his chosen deity, and consecrating his life and mind to his service, got rid of all the fetters of the world. Mahadevi was overwhelmed with joy to hear the fortunate of his son. Yadava Prakasha again started his work of teaching. At the sight of Ramanuja, he was at first a little frightened, but taking it for granted that he did not know anything about his murderous design, he expressed great joy. He asked Ramanuja to resume his studies under him. A few days later, the venerable Alavantar, that is Sri Yamunacharya, accompanied by many disciples, came to Kanchipuram to have the darshan of Sri Varadaraja. One day, while returning after the darshan, Alavandar saw Yadava Prakasha, the lion of doctrine of non-dualism, coming by the way with his hand resting on the shoulders of Ramanuja and followed by a retinue of other disciples. At the sight of Ramanuja's spiritual luster and incomparable beauty, the venerable Yamunacharya felt intensely attracted towards him, and on enquiry came to know that the young man was the author of the elaborate commentary on the mantra Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Alavandar was exceedingly pleased at this, but he was pained to see the gracious form of Ramanuja by the side of the dry-hearted Yadava. One day, while expounding the two portions of the two mantras from the Upanishad, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, all that is verily Brahma, and Neha Nanasti Kinchana, there is no diversity whatsoever here, Yadava Prakasha expounded very beautifully and with considerable eloquence the oneness of Atman and Brahman. But Ramanuja expressed his own reflections. The interpretation of Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma as the universe is born of Brahman, is sustained by Brahman and dissolves itself into Brahman. So it may surely be said to be permeated with Brahman. And Neha Nanasti Kinchana does not mean that there is no diversity whatsoever here, but as the things of this samsara are not existing severally, but as pearls strung on the thread from a garland, so the various objects threaded in Brahman have formed this universe. On hearing this exposition, Yadava expressed great annoyance and said, "If you don't like my expositions, then don't come to me anymore." "As you wish, sir," said Ramanuja, and after worshipping the feet of his guru, he took leave of him and abstained from going there. One day when Ramanuja was engaged in discussing Shastras at his own place, Sri Kanchipurna appeared there. Ramanuja persuaded Kanchipurna to accept him as his disciple. But on hearing this, Kanchipurna objected, saying that he was a Shudra and an ignorant man. But Ramanuja fell at his feet and began to weep. Kanchipurna instantly raised him and said, "My child, I am blessed today by seeing your devotion to God. From today, you will fetch a jar full of holy water from the well for the worship of Sri Varadaraja. Very soon will Varadaraja fulfill your desire." One day, while Sri Yamunacharya was expounding the scriptures, there came in two Brahmanas from Kanchipuram. He was very glad to meet them and inquired about Ramanuja. The two Brahmanas said, after giving up his disciple to Yadava Prakasha, Ramanuja is now studying the scriptures by himself, and according to the behest of Sri Kanchipurna, he every day fetches a water from the Sal well for the worship of the Lord. Yamuna's joy knew no bounds. And addressing to his chief disciple Mahapurna, he told him to bring Ramanuja to Srirangam immediately. On hearing this, Mahapurna saluted the holy feet of Guru and started for Kanchipuram. After a few days, Alavandar fell ill and the disciple grew very anxious. Giving over the charge of the mud to his chief disciple Tiruvaranga, Alavandar sat in lotus posture. He withdrew his mind and concentrated in his heart. At that time, his disciples were sweetly singing the glories of the name of the God. Gradually, Alavandar raised his mind from the heart to the point between the eyebrows. Tears of joy began to flow from the corner of his eyes. The hair stood on end and the entire body trembled with joy. At last, by giving his body through the aperture at the crown of the head, he got dissolved into the Supreme. The singing stopped all of a sudden, and the disciples burst into loud lamentations. After taking leave of his revered Guru, Mahapurna started for Kanchipuram. He met Ramanuja and expressed about Alavanda's desire to see him. Immediately, Ramanuja and Mahapurna set out for Srirangam to see his great Guru. But as they were nearing the mud, they saw a huge crowd, and when they inquired, they came to know that Alavandar had attained the supreme abode of the Lord. Hearing this, Ramanuja fell down unconscious and Mahapurna began to wail aloud. A short while after, gaining self-control, Ramanuja followed Mahapurna. Ramanuja asked, "I find that the three fingers of the Maharishi's right hand are folded and clenched. Were they like this during his lifetime?" The disciples who were close by said, "No, his fingers used to remain straight. We cannot guess why they are so now." On hearing this, Ramanuja declared aloud, "Remaining always in the fold of Vaishnavism, I shall protect the people deluded by ignorance, bestowing upon them the 5 samskaras, making them versed in the Dravida Vedas and devoted to the religion of surrender." As soon as he declared this, one of the fingers became straight. Ramanuja declared again, "Taking into consideration all the interpretations, I shall, for the well-being of the people, write the Sri Bhashyam, which will usher in good and establish the knowledge of reality. As soon as he said so, another finger relaxed and got straightened. Ramanuja said again, in order to pay off the debt to that gracious Muni Parasara, who out of compassion wrote the gem among the Puranas, in which he clearly lays down the nature of Ishvara, Jivas and the world, and the way of their progress, I shall name one greatly learned Vaishnava after him. No sooner he had said so, the remaining finger relaxed and became straight. All were exceedingly amazed to witness this. It was clear that this young man was going to hold the position of Alavandar in times to come. Then Ramanuja went back to Kanchipuram. About 6 months later, Ramanuja's mother shook off her body. Ramanuja became restless and asked Kanchipurna to make him his disciple. But Kanchipurna, who is the most favorite devotee of Lord Varadaraja, appraised about this to the Lord. The Lord in reply said in the dream to Kanchipurna that Ramanuja's guru was Mahatma Mahapurna. So on hearing this, Ramanuja prostrated before Lord Varadaraja and set out for Srirangam to have his initiation from Mahapurna. At the same time, Mahapurna and his wife had also come to Kanchipuram to initiate Ramanuja. Being purified by 5 purifactory rites such as wearing the insignia of the discus and conch in the right and the left arms, and after meditating upon the feet of Alavandar, Mahapurna uttered the Vaishnava mantra in his right ear of Ramanuja. At the request of Ramanuja, Mahapurna initiated Ramanuja's wife Rakshakambal. Ramanuja placed half portion of his house at the disposal of Mahapurna. 6 months passed by. One day, Rakshakambal, who was by nature little shrewd and gave more importance to external cleanliness, went to the nearby well to fetch water. The wife of Mahapurna too had gone to the same well to fetch water. A few drops of water from the pitcher of Mahapurna's wife fell into that of Rakshakambal, who got wild with rage and behaved impudently to Mahapurna's wife. After this incident, Mahapurna and his wife left to Srirangam with a sad heart. Hearing what has happened from his wife, Ramanuja could not control his anger. He walked towards the temple of Varadaraja. Sometime after Ramanuja had left, a lean and a hungry Brahmana appeared at the door and begged some rice to Rakshakambal. She turned on the beggar with flaming eyes and cried out in a shrill voice, "Get off, go elsewhere. Who is going to give you rice here?" Grieved at heart and cursing a lot, the poor Brahmana walked towards the temple of Varadaraja. On the way he met Ramanuja. Ramanuja brought him and he said that, "Please sir, do not go back. Please go with me to a shop. I shall give you a letter with some turmeric fruits and betel and a new cloth. With this you go to my wife and tell her that you were sent from her father's house." Then, under the signature of his father-in-law, he wrote a letter in the following strain. "My dear son, my second daughter is to be married soon. Please therefore send Rakshakambal to my place along with this man." With this letter, this Brahmana went to his wife. Rakshakambal, filled with joy, received him with great courtesy. Ramanuja too came home. She showed the letter to Ramanuja and bowed down at the feet of her husband and set out for her father's place escorted by the Brahmana. Then Ramanuja too left home and walked towards the temple of Varadaraja. He prostrated before him and said, "My lord, today I have become yours in every way. Do please accept me." So saying, he procured some ochre cloth and a staff touched by the feet of Varadaraja and went to the banks of the old lake in front of the temple. After ablutions, he ignited the sacrificial fire and therein made oblations of the desire for wealth and wife. At that time, Kanchipurna, as commanded by Varadaraja, addressed him as Yatiraja, king among ascetics. He then accepted the Tridanda of the Sannyasin as a symbol of keeping the body, mind and speech under control. Yatiraja, dressed in shining ochre robes, now appeared effulgent as the newly risen sun. One day, when the old mother of Yadava Prakasha came to have the darshan of Sri Varadaraja, she saw Ramanuja at the mud. Captivated by his great gracefulness, she wanted her son to be the disciple of Ramanuja, which would bring him supreme peace. But Yadava Prakasha would not dream of becoming the disciple of his own disciple. Yadava Prakasha also heard from Kanchipurna of the uncommon greatness of Ramanuja. The previous night he was told in a dream by some divine being to become a disciple of Ramanuja. So he went to the monastery and was charmed to see the transcendental effulgence of Ramanuja. He fell at his feet and asked for pardon for his previous outrageous behavior. Ramanuja, unable to bear the sight, instantly embraced him and made him his disciple and gave him sannyasa. Ramanuja, with the command of Lord Varadaraja, was brought to Srirangam and made the leader of Vaishnava community. Great was the joy of the pure-minded Vaishnavas. Ramanuja then brought his cousin Govinda from Kalahasti, and Govinda embraced Vaishnavism and was initiated into sannyasa. Mahapurna asked Ramanuja to learn the meaning of Vaishnava mantra from Goshtipurna of Goshtipura. But when Ramanuja approached the feet of Goshtipurna, he was rejected by him 18 times. To this, Ramanuja began to shed tears in utter dejection and despair. Moved by this, Goshtipurna gave him the sacred 8-syllable mantra with mystic meaning and said that whoever hears this will after his death attain liberation. He took leave of his guru and proceeded towards Srirangam. Suddenly, a strange feeling arose in his mind. He went to the high gates of Vishnu temple and invited everyone to share with him the priceless jewel that will lead to liberation. So saying, he pronounced the great mantra, Om Namo Narayana, from the depths of his joyful heart. The people of Goshtipura surrounding him pronounced the mantra with him for 3 times and became blessed. In the meantime, Goshtipurna came to know of what Ramanuja did and became extremely angry. Without being in the least frightened, but with great humility, Ramanuja said, according to your words, whoever might hear the said mantra is sure to attain liberation. Let hell be mine, but all of them will be blessed by attaining the supreme goal of life. Realizing the supreme magnanimity of Ramanuja, Goshtipurna embraced him in deep devotion. One day, while describing the qualities of Yamunacharya to his disciples, Ramanuja remembered his own pledges. Now, he had to write the Sri Bhashya. If this book is to be written, he have to take the help of another book called Bodhayana Vritti. Accompanied by Kuresa, his disciple, Ramanuja started to Sharada Peeth in Kashmir to retrieve this book. But the scholars of Sharada Peeth informed that the book has been eaten up by worms. But Goddess Sharada appeared before him and presented the book with her own hands and said, my child, take this book and return home without any delay. For if the scholars came to know of this, it will be impossible to take the book and go. But after a few days, the scholars wrestled the book from them and went away. The dismay of Ramanuja knew no bounds. But Kuresa, his disciple, who had an extraordinary memory, had read the book from the time they started from Kashmir. He wrote the entire book within 6 days and handed over to Ramanuja. Then Ramanuja started writing the Sri Bhashya. After completing this great work, Ramanuja wrote 4 more invaluable books, the Vedanta Deepam, Vedanta Sara, Vedartha Sangraha and Gita Bhashya. By composing the Sri Bhashya, he fulfilled the second desire of Yamuna Muni. He had previously fulfilled his first desire by reading with his own disciple the Dravida Prapanda Mala. He named his doctrine the Vishishtatvaita Vada and considered himself blessed. Among his many disciples, few of them, namely Kuresa, Dasharathi, Yagnamurti, Yagnesha, Karpasarama, Dhanurdasa, Anantacharya, were close to him. He named Kuresa's son Parasara, thus fulfilling the third desire of Yamuna Muni. Once, when Ramanuja went to Madurai, he worshipped the Lord of Andal, Lord Sundarabahu. Andal was a manifestation of Mahalakshmi, who was born in 3005 BC. Previously, Andal had prayed in her hymn to Sundarabahu, O Hari, if you graciously accept my hand, I shall offer you 100 jars full of sweet rice prepared with milk and other delicious things, and 100 jars full of butter along with that. The Lord fulfilled this prayer of Andal, but Andal could not keep up her word, for soon she attained the Lord and dissolved into him. So, in order to fulfill her pledge, Ramanuja offered to Sri Sundarabahu 100 jars full of sweet rice and 100 jars of butter. For having done this act befitting a brother, Ramanuja came to be renowned as Godagraja, or the elder brother of Andal. Thus, during the first 60 years of his lifetime, Sri Ramanuja went to various parts of India and spread the philosophy of Vasishtadvaita. The next 60 years he spent only in Srirangam at the blessed feet of Sri Ranganatha Swami. The devotees of Sri Parambatur installed an image of Ramanuja inside the huge temple. When, according to the Vedic rites, they infused life into the stone image and finished the final rites of opening the eye of the image, Ramanuja, who was at that time in Srirangam, had 2 drops of blood trickle down in the corner of his eyes. Taking pity on the disciples and devotees of Srirangam, Ramanuja installed a stone image and transmitted his own powers to it by breathing into the crown of the head in Srirangam. Ramanuja, the large-hearted one, entered into the supreme realm of the feet of Lord Vishnu on a Saturday, the 10th day of bright half of the moon of Magha in 1059 Saka era at the age of 120. Now we shall see the teachings and the final message of Ramanuja. Worship Sri Vaishnavas exactly as you would do in the case of your spiritual guru. Have sincere faith in the teaching of great acharyas. Never be slaves to your senses. Be not satisfied with the acquisition of worldly knowledge. Go on reading repeatedly the books dealing with the greatness of God and the wonders of His creation. Learn to treat all your feelings with indifference. Enjoy the utterance of names and glories of God and God's devotees with much relish as the utterance of God's names and glories. Bear in mind that he who renders service to God's devotees attains God speedily. Therefore, unless you dedicate yourself to the service of God and His devotees, you will not be saved, however wise you may be. Do not consider the life of a Vaishnava as a means for acquiring any selfish advantage. You must endeavor to realize the ideal. Devote a portion of a day, at least 1 hour, to the contemplation of the greatness of your spiritual guru, and sometime every day to the reading of the sacred writings of the alvars or acharyas. Always seek the company of those that pursue the path of self-surrender to God. Do not associate with people who are always in quest of sense enjoyment, but mingle with the devotees of God to the extent possible. He who has truly surrendered himself at the feet of God should not bestow any thought on his future, which is entirely at his disposal. For the least anxiety felt in that connection betrays the hypocrisy in his self-surrender. His present life is entirely determined by his past karmas, so it is not proper to grieve over it. Let not the performance of your duties be regarded as a means for achieving worldly ends, but consider it as service rendered to the Supreme Being. Spend your lives in service done to the Lord in the sacred places on earth, or remain where you are, throwing all your burdens on God or your own Guru, and ever immersed in the contemplation of your mantra. If none of the above is possible, seek a Vaishnava who is full of wisdom, devotion, and desirelessness, and move with him in such a way that he may be kind towards you, uprooting all your egoism. Abide by the Vaishnava's words. This itself is a means for your salvation.